ready to begin. And I'd like to invite Karen Fallingstad, our pianist, who's a professor of piano at San Diego State University, to tell us what she's going to play for the prelude. Karen?
Hello, everybody. Great to see you. Happy Mother's Day. My first piece will be, my prelude will be a piece called, well, it's been entitled by 19th century people. I'm not sure if it's the title the author gave it, but it's called May Breezes. So we have May outside, and this is by Felix Mendelssohn. A Song Without Words, Opus.
Oh, you never connected your TV?
62, number 4.
I don't know how you do without it. Sometimes it's just like, good for you. That helps, you know.
Iris, we need to mute. It's okay. Did you get that? So it's by Felix Mendelssohn, a piece called May Breezes. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So I'll start playing. Please mute yourself because it does change the sound of the music if you don't mute yourself. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Karen. Thank you so much for playing. I want to invite Mary Carter Vale to start off our welcome.
Good morning. Welcome to Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. We are a congregation that celebrates our action in the world and how we live each day in love and peace and kindness. And we are so glad you're here with us today. Right now we have 92 screens. That's really exciting. Welcome.
We are glad you're with us on this Mother's Day. We have several announcements we'd like to start off with before we move into our time of worship together. I want to invite Katie Boskoff to come on and share with us an update on our pledge drive this morning. Katie, are you here?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay. Hi, everybody. It's me, the chair of the never-ending pledge drive. We're going to get through this. You know how when you're watching a football game and you get to the last 2 minutes and you're thinking, oh, this game's almost over. And then it takes like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour to play those last 2 minutes. And you're wondering, is this game ever going to get over? So you can see what a football fan I am. Anyway, I know that's what a lot of you are thinking, because that's certainly what I'm thinking. Is this game ever going to be over? Well, the good news is we are in the fourth quarter for sure. As of last week, we had $224,000, which is 75% of our goal, from 87 pledging units, which is about 75% of those that we're anticipating. And we're only $75,000 away from the goal. So I'm thinking, wouldn't it be great if there's somebody out there today who's got $75,000 that they would like to just put us over the top, give us that final touchdown, slam dunk, whatever, the game will be over. Wouldn't that be great? Now, seriously, I know that the pledge drive is not a game, but you gotta keep the fun in fundraising, right? And I also truly believe that fundraising is a team sport and everybody needs to participate. And I also know that we all care about Summit. We believe in our mission and our vision, and we want to support us the best that we can so that we not only survive this difficult, unusual times, but that we thrive in the coming year, right? Right. Now, starting July 1st, Everett Howe, who we're going to hear from today, is going to start as our new part-time minister, and he thinks he's going to get paid. Now, sorry, but I guess, Everett, you know you're going to get paid, don't you? Because we have a contract. You will be paid, as will our other wonderful staff that we couldn't do without, Mary and Linda and Mark. Salaries and benefits will continue to happen, well as part-time musicians and our childcare provider. We will continue that. But even though we're not there now, we still have a building, and it needs to be supported, the facilities, the operations. We got things we need to spend money on. So this week, the Finance Committee is going to be meeting, and they've got to seriously crunch numbers based on what we're anticipating with pledging income to create a budget that they're going to propose that we're going to be voting on June 14th, which is about a month. So for those of you that have pledged already, thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you that haven't, and about 30 of you that we haven't heard from, now is the time. And I'm thinking, as hopeful optimist as I am, last year the average pledge was about $2,100. This year so far the average pledge is about $2,500. So knowing that some can do more and some can do less, everybody gives what they can, what they're comfortable with, and pledges are appreciated. If they kept up average, all 30 of them, we would reach goal. So it's doable, it's possible, it's hopeful. So the time couldn't be more important. So how about right after this service, you just bop over to the Summit website, summitUUF.org/pledge form, and you can fill your pledge online. It's easy, it's painless, and you don't even need a stamp. So let's do it. Please put me out of my misery. Let's get this income up to the goal of $300,500, and let's get this this campaign over. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for hanging in there and for doing such a beautiful job and organizing us. We've added so much in the last 2 weeks to our pledge collection after we sort of reinstituted the campaign and tried to get it going again. Thank you so much for leading us in that effort and staying with it. Wanted to mention that there is a healthcare vigil happening online this week. If you want to find out more, please contact member Charlie Barrett. You can find his name in the directory. Charlie is interested in participating and wants to invite everyone who might be interested in recognizing the nurses in particular. About 100 nurses have died so far of COVID-19 in our country, and so many other healthcare workers, medical doctors, and others have also succumbed to the disease, trying to battle it. So let's participate as we're moved to do so, and get in touch with Charlie and let him know. I appreciate it. He'll give you information on how to do that. We will be having circles of celebration and circles of mourning gathering for two of our members who died this week. Joanna Jones passed away on Sunday evening at 6 o'clock, and this last Sunday, and Marion Krause died the following day on Monday in the afternoon. So we want to encourage you, if you knew these people and would like to celebrate their lives with me and with others who knew them, to join us. Those times and dates will be announced in the near future via an email blast to the congregation. So here it is, Mother's Day. And as you've heard me say before, in years before, this is a day to celebrate those who have given birth to members of our lives, our community, our world. It's also a day for celebrating those who have adopted children and nurtured them and encouraged them and their lives. This is a day for recognizing all who apply their energies and attentions to the work of mothering, regardless of gender. And this is, according to Sarah Ruddick, one of my favorite feminist philosophers, not only a personal act, but a political act, and it's a very important act. So I want to encourage us as we move through this particular service, among other things, to remember all of those who have been in these roles in our lives and played this part in bringing us to where we are today into the world. And of course, we're not wanting to lionize people who have been birth mothers, who have been abusive toward others, but we, and you hear my dogs in the background, we want to encourage all of us to consider those and hold them close, those in our midst who have contributed to our being here and to our care and nurture. All right, let's hear from Jim and Karen. Karen Childress Evans, Jim Evans. Good morning. Are you there?
Good morning. Can you hear us?
We can hear you. You may need to move a little closer to the mic if you can.
Okay. All right. Is that any better?
I think that's better. Yes.
Okay.
So tell us about this song, Jim. You wrote it, right?
I did. Yes, I did. Actually, I wrote this for my mother's 82nd birthday. And I don't know if you can see me. You need to click on that screen up there for them to see us. Can you see that? Oh,
Yeah, okay. Yes, you can. Okay, that's
oh, okay.
That's on. Just a second. And that's my mom.
Okay, yeah, I wrote this for my mother's 82nd birthday. She's now 94 and doing well in a local assisted living. And so this is called MOM, which is an acronym for Mother of Mine. MOM is an acronym for that mother of mine. Sweet and lovely, and cute and funny is that mother of mine. Sweeter than apple pie, and brighter than the summer sky. The twinkle in her eye, that mother of mine. Now everyone who knows her loves her. Ask around and you will see. Oh, that's why I sing her honor. She means so much to me. MOM is an acronym for that mother of mine. Sweet and lovely and cute and funny is that mother of mine. Sweet sweeter than apple pie, brighter than the summer sky, a twinkle in her eye, that mother of mine. Kind and loving and thoughtful, her life is all about giving, smarter than the average mother. That's why with love I'm singing. SUUF is an acronym for that mother of mine. Sweet and lovely, cute and funny as that mother of mine. Sweeter than apple pie, brighter than the summer sky, twinkle in her eye, that mother of mine. Mothers are always special. Today I'm going to boast of all the special people. We love our moms the most. So SUUF is an acronym for that mother of mine. Sweet and lovely and cute and funny as that mother of mine. Sweeter than apple pie, and brighter than the summer sky. Twinkle in her eye, that mother of mine. Mothers are more than special. We put their patience to the test, but their love is unconditional. Well, you know she loves me best. Now SUUF is an acronym for that mother of mine. Sweet and lovely and cute and funny as that mother of mine. Sweeter than apple pie, and brighter than the summer sky. Twinkle in her eye, that mother of mine. Twinkle in her eye.
Happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Jim and Karen. Appreciate it. And Jim, your mother is somebody I would have really liked to know, I think. You could sing that song for her. That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Let's turn to our chalice lighting, please. The chalice is something that we do in all of our times together as a way of remembering our common shared faith and our commitments to love and justice in the world. And the reading or the chalice lighting, you can feel free to light your own chalices if you are candles, if you have one with you, as a read along. Would like to invite you to read aloud with me, but stay muted as you go and just read along from where you are. And you may not have the order of service in front of you. We did send it out to all our members, and I understand there's some difficulty of some of you retrieving it off of line from the link, but you can just listen in. We light this flame for the art of sacred unknowing, humbled by all that we cannot fathom in this time. We come into the presence of what we do know, perhaps the only thing we can ever know, that love is now and forever, the only answer to everything and everyone in every moment. All right, I want to invite Jim and Karen to contribute once again with their singing. Thank you.
This is a Bellamy Brothers song from 1976, and it is Mother's Day, so we want everyone to let your love flow.
There's a reason for the sunshine sky, and there's a reason why I'm feeling so high. Must be the season when the love light shines all around us. So let that feeling grab you deep inside and send you reading where your love can't hide. Then go stealing through the moonlit night with your love. So let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show. And you'll know what I mean, it's the season. So let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love bind you to all different things, and let your love shine. And you'll know what I mean, that's the reason. Now there's a reason for the warm, sweet night, and there's a reason for the candlelight. Must be the reason when the love light shines all around us. So let that wonder take you into space and lay you under its loving embrace, and feel the thunder as it warms your face. You can't hold back. So let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show. And you'll know what I mean, it's the season. So let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love bind you to all different things, and let your love shine. And you'll know what I mean, that's the reason. Just let your love flow like a mountain stream, and let your love grow with the smallest of dreams, and let your love show. And you'll know what I mean, it's the season. So let your love fly like a bird on a wing, and let your love bind you to all different things, and let your love shine. And you'll know what I mean, that's the reason. That's the reason. That's the reason.
Thank you.
That was really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have a story for Time for All Ages for Mother's Day to share with you. Excited to see so many. I just noticed we had 104 screens on. That's, I think, our record so far. So that's really cool. So do you know why we celebrate Mother's Day? It seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? Many of us have mothers who we want to celebrate, right? Well, not everyone. This can also be a hard day for many, as these relationships can be complicated or even non-existent, right? So it's complicated. So for me, I think about this as a day of celebrating the folks who cared for and nurtured me as a child or even as an adult. And like I said, it's complicated. May you celebrate if you choose in a way that is authentic to who you are and to who your caregivers are. Now, there are many celebrations throughout the world of mothers, including female deities and more. And the beginnings of Mother's Day in North America may surprise you, as it was not about flowers, cards, chocolate, breakfast in bed. The story behind this celebration, like our relationships, is complicated. And it began with a woman named Anne Jarvis in 1858. At least this is what I could find when I was researching more about this story. So Anne was a young mother in rural Appalachia. She, like other women of her time, was mothering her babies as best she could in a very poor community. Now, this was over 100 years ago, and there was not a lot of health care or even basic education for mothers on how to provide the best care for their babies. So after 2 of Anne's babies died as infants, she decided to learn how to prevent future deaths. So she worked with the local doctors to learn ways of preventing infant death through basic sanitation and disease prevention. That these are things that could be done at home that she just didn't know about. And so she went and got educated and learned how to do this. And she started something called the Mother's Workday to teach other local moms what she had learned so their babies could do well as well. And they helped reduce the local, they helped keep more babies healthy and well in their community to be raised to healthy children and healthy young adults. Then the Civil War began, And many of these former babies went off to war. And during this war, many, many people died. Even more died in the war prisons or the camps of wounded soldiers, of disease. More died there than they did in the battle because the disease spread was so difficult to control. I mean, you have no hot running water. You don't have any of the sanitation equipment that we have nowadays. They had nothing. So Anne and her followers created something called the Women's Friendship Day, where they would go into the camps and the prisons to help with education and the healing of the sick and wounded using what they had learned to care for their babies. And when the war ended, this group then gathered together the fighters from both sides to listen to each other and to heal the community. Now, Julia Ward Howe was an activist with Anne in this work. And Julia was inspired by Anne and her experience in the war. And she wrote the Mother's Day Proclamation in 1870. And it's a really cool thing to look up and read, but I'm not going to read the whole thing here. But she spoke these words to open this proclamation. Arise then, women of the day. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether ours be a baptism of war or of tears. So she and the many of the women doing this work of helping thousands of wounded, helping folks with disease, they had all experienced a heartbreaking loss of their young babies, and then the young women and men who they'd raised when they went off to war. And they had lost these young people. And they were saying that we are done. We fight for the survival of our babies and our children, and then we lose them to war and disease. No more. We want peace. We value health. We love our children. We care for each other, and each one of us is important. This is what the Mother's Day Proclamation was about. I share this story with you today as we hold those who have mothered us in our hearts, nurturing and caregiving, unconditional healing and unconditional love. These are people who figure out a better way when folks are dying and say no to death when there is a life-affirming solution. And these are women who share these ideas, and these visions, their visions, were the beginning of today's American Mother's Day. Now, at this time, we are all in need of some care and to be caring as we prevent the spread of disease in our communities. And when I think about the heartbreaking work that these women did before, during, and after the Civil War, I'm reminded of the sacrifice that caregivers make once again. We are seeing that now, again, as so many caregivers are working to care for and heal many in need during this pandemic. As parents are, and mothers, fathers, and caregivers are taking care of children at home while trying to work a job or trying to figure out where their next meal is coming from. So at this time, let us be caring and loving to each other, and let us remember these powerful women who were the ancestors of this Mother's Day of peace, of caring, of love. And that is my story for you today.
Thank you, Mary. Let's take a few moments to open ourselves. I often do this in times of worship. Personally, I open myself to all of those memories, all of those people, all of those names that just have a way of crowding in on me from time to time and pressing in and calling for my attention and calling me to remember. Let us spend a minute together in silence, remembering our mothers, remembering those whose lives we're carrying in our hearts, their well-being that we're concerned about. And let us carry in our hearts and minds a sense of how we're all connected in this great web of life. Meditate with me in silence. And now I invite you to join us in our ritual of just voicing out the names of those who have come to us during this time. I want to invite you to unmute and say the names, and then mute yourselves again, please. And let's just listen to what comes forward and hold everyone in heart and mind.
Jean, Cecil,
Betty Louise.
Mrs. Litval.
Harry,
Everett Howe.
Vivian.
Mary Palmer,
Sylvia.
Marion, Joanna,
Anne, Jane,
Ian, Connie, Teresa.
Aunt Barbara.
Julia.
Marilyn,
Hay. Jeannie Hayes.
Kraus,
Bonnie,
Lark.
Pat,
Anna.
Joni,
Jean.
Esther, Andy,
Jay.
Ellen,
Maud.
Harriet.
Jennifer,
Alicia.
Jeff.
Harold,
Evelyn. Gwen.
Bill.
Fanny Kraus,
So I invite you to please remute yourselves and so that we can continue on with the service. Thank you for those you have named. We want to remember them. We also want to remember all who remain unnamed, those in our world who suffer any kind of want or need at this moment. Our prayers, our heartfelt intentions for love and safety and well-being is for all creatures on this earth. May we carry out that intention as best we can in our lives in relation to one another and to those far beyond our communities. In closing, I'd like to offer this poem by the Reverend Lynn Unger. It's a powerful poem, and I invite you to use it as a kind of anchoring time for your reflection on this Mother's Day, on this day. The poem is entitled Pandemic. What if you thought of it as the Jews consider the Sabbath, the most sacred of times? Cease from travel, cease from buying and selling. Give up, just for now, on trying to make the world different than it is. Sing, pray, touch only those to whom you commit your life. Center down. And when your body has become still, reach out with your heart. Know that we are connected in ways that are terrifying and beautiful. You could hardly deny it now. Know that our lives are in one another's hands. Surely that has become clear. Do not reach out your hands, reach out your heart, reach out your words, reach out all the tendrils of compassion that move invisibly where we cannot touch. Promise this world your love, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, so long as we all shall live. Ashe, Aho, Shalom, Amen, Salam. Blessed be. Now I'd like to invite you to sing along with yourselves muted, please. The song Hush, which many of us are familiar with. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? The second version is Sounds Like Freedom, somebody's calling my name. The third one is Sounds Like Justice, somebody's calling my name. And the last one is I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? So Karen, would you lead us in this and invite you to sing it at home? And we'll do our best. Unfortunately, the Zoom technology, the platform that we're on, doesn't enable us to open up and sing all at the same time. It would be quite cacophonous and disruptive. But sing where you are. Keep yourselves muted and sing where you are.
Okay.
Okay, sing along, everybody. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. I can see you singing along there, folks. It's really inspiring. Even though I can't hear you, it's inspiring. And I look forward to the day when we can all join in voice together in person. That's great. Well, it's my pleasure to introduce a very special guest with us this morning, Everett Howe. Welcome. Everett, you came to Unitarian Universalism as an adult, and when you and your wife Isabella started looking for a spiritual community in which you could participate, and not having any prior religious affiliation like many you use today, you looked online to learn about various denominations, and the only one that fit you well enough was Unitarian Universalism, and it really did fit, didn't it? It really did.
I guess so.
Everett and Bella joined First UU San Diego in 2006, and we're happy to have many members and friends of First UU with us this morning, tuning in, because they want to be supportive of you, as we all do, Everett and Bella. And soon after they joined, both of them were involved in many aspects of the church's life. In 2010, while Everett was board president, that's pretty quick, Everett, to move very quickly into a very important leadership role in the congregation. While he was president, Everett thought he might possibly have a call to ministry. That's quick too. And he cautiously explored the possibility. In 2004, Everett finally enrolled at Starr King School for the Ministry. I suspect it's one of those situations you just couldn't deny, you couldn't turn away from. It was so strong. And that's the case for many people who are in ministry. From 2015 until 2017, Everett was the part-time minister at Fruit Memorial Church in Pasadena. And last year, he spent 5 months as a chaplain intern at Sharp Memorial Hospital here in San Diego. Everett graduated from Starr King School for the Ministry in May of 2019, and in September of 2019 was awarded a ministerial fellowship by the Unitarian Universalist Association. He was ordained by First UU Church last weekend on Saturday, and it was a privilege to be involved in that service. And I hope many of you, if you weren't there, had a chance to look at it. It's on Facebook. You can find it on my Facebook page. You can also, I think, access it through the First UU Church website. So look for it. And it's really a great event. Everett's first career is as a research mathematician, which endears you, Everett, to the hearts of many in our congregation who are so dedicated to math and science and to the knowledge, human knowledge, and all the ways in which it can inform our lives. In January, Everett left his job of 23 years with a think tank in La Jolla, but he's continuing to do research and to collaborate with academic colleagues as a, quote, free-range mathematician. That's interesting, free-range mathematician. Bella is a professional editor working mostly with academics in the humanities and social sciences. And Bella and Everett have 2 children, C and Robert, who are both off at school. C is working on their master's degree in medieval studies at the University of York. I understand that you had hoped to go back to C, and right now during this period of time, and it just wasn't able to happen because of the pandemic, and we're sorry for that and hope that you're able to maintain good and warm connections with C in this time of separation. And Robert is an undergraduate at UC Davis studying computer science and linguistics. So Everett, with that introduction, I want to turn it over to you. Just before I do that, though, I want to tell everybody that Everett will be here after the service is over to answer any questions you might have. Of course, he can refuse to answer any question you might have, but you're free to ask any question that you want. And Mary Carter Bale will facilitate that conversation. I'll be absenting myself from that conversation so that you can feel free to just engage Everett as you move to do so. Everett, thank you for being here today. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing what you have to share with us. And if I could, I would give you a big hug of welcome.
Later on, sometime next year. Thank you, Frank. That's a wonderful introduction. And I'm going to mention some of those things that you mentioned also in the course of this sermon. So as you said, 10 years ago, I was on the board of trustees of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of San Diego. And that June, I transitioned from vice president to president. And the first thing I did as president was to go to General Assembly, the annual gathering of Unitarian Universalist congregations. It was the first time I had ever been to GA, and I was excited to see so much of our community gathered together. Now, this was in 2010, and there was tension at General Assembly because it had already been announced that 2 years later, GA was going to be held in Phoenix, Arizona. But Arizona had just passed SB 1070, a draconian anti-immigrant bill, most of whose provisions were eventually struck down by the US Supreme Court. There were calls to boycott the entire state of Arizona, but others said that the burden of a boycott would be borne by the service workers in the state. So at the 2010 GA, the question was, what should we do? In the end, the delegates at GA passed a business resolution that called for us to go to Phoenix, but to make the 2012 General Assembly a justice GA, with minimal business sessions and with a strong focus on partnering with local Arizona activists and civil rights groups to protest SB 1070 and to protest Sheriff Joe Arpaio's cruel and unjust law enforcement strategies. Now, as a newbie to GA, I was struck by the way that this decision had been reached. Informal discussions and negotiations were held in the hallways and the hotel rooms of the convention center. And then the moderator found creative ways of fitting these resulting solutions into the strictures of Robert's Rules of Order. But more than that, I was struck by the idea that in Phoenix, we would be intentionally letting others lead. We would not be swooping in to rescue, but instead we would be providing added strength and numbers to local groups that were already fighting for justice and compassion. We would be in covenant with local leaders. We would be expanding our circle of compassion and trust. We would be treating the people of Arizona as our neighbors. And that is the theme that I would like to address today. Who is our neighbor? And closer to home, who is our family? So Frank already introduced me, but let me say a few words about myself as well, because we'll be seeing each other. My name is Everett Howe, and my wife Isabella Firth and I have lived in San Diego since 1996. As Frank said, we have 2 children who are now off in college and graduate school, and we've been Unitarian Universalists since 2005. And before that, we were not part of any religious tradition. Theologically, I am a humanist who appreciates mystery, and I sometimes call myself a universalist humanist. And my first career, as Frank said, has been as a research mathematician. Now, the year when I was board president at First Church was a significant time in my life. That year started with the General Assembly that I just spoke about, and midway through the year, I felt a call to ministry. I wanted to do more for the life of our faith, and I sincerely hoped that I could do that without having to be on the board of trustees for the rest of my life. It took a few years to put this call into action, but I finally started seminary in 2014. And since then, I've been the intern minister at our UU congregation in Pasadena. I spent 5 months as a chaplain intern at Sharp Memorial Hospital, and I prepared for my meeting with the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA. Last week, as Frank said, I was ordained by First UU Church of San Diego, and on July 1st, I will come to Summit as your new half-time contract minister. I will be with you while you are in search for a full-time called minister. Now, who knows what exactly church is going to look like in July? It will certainly be different from what I and your board of trustees were imagining when we were discussing the job in January and February. But the essential elements that make Summit a vibrant, loving, justice-seeking congregation, those don't require in-person contact. And we will be able to continue connecting with one another online and by phone in large and small groups until it is once again safe for us to meet in one place. It is hard to do without face-to-face contact, but we can support one another through this time, and I am so grateful that I will be with you to help as best as I can. Now, I was thinking about how the people in church communities support one another, and it struck me that the ability, or the lack of ability, to expand one's sense of community influences how we respond to this pandemic. If you tend to think of other people as strangers to whom you owe no consideration, then you may be less likely to want to wear a face mask when going out, because the primary benefit of the masks is that they help other people to keep from getting sick. But if you view other people as part of your community, as your neighbors with whom you have a relationship, then wearing a mask becomes easier. The more people you feel responsible to, the easier it is to practice social distancing, because you are saving your friends, you are saving your community. Now, one of the benefits of our Unitarian Universalist congregations is that they give us many opportunities to strengthen these community building muscles, to practice extending our circle of neighbors. I think this is something that you here at Summit know very well. For instance, several years now, Summit has been in relationship with the women of the Las Colinas Detention Center. Many people do not see detained prisoners as their neighbors, as part of their community. Prisoners are usually dehumanized and are subject to abuse and humiliation. But in the tradition of our Universalist ancestors who believed that a loving God would have compassion for every person, Unitarian Universalists respect the inherent worth and dignity of all people. By connecting with the women at Las Colinas, you are bringing this principle to life. So earlier I said that one theme of this sermon is, who is our neighbor? And that choice of words is intentional, because the question, who is my neighbor, is in fact taken from the Gospel of Luke, part of the Christian scriptures. And you might think it's a little odd that a humanist, atheist preacher would tell a story from the Christian scriptures, but one of the 6 sources that you claim for our tradition is Jewish and Christian teachings that call on us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that is precisely the story that I want to tell you now, the parable of the Good Samaritan. In the Gospel of Luke, it is said that a lawyer, that is an expert on the Torah, asks the Rabbi Jesus what he has to do in order to inherit eternal life. Jesus turns the question back on the lawyer and asks him, what does the Torah say, and how do you interpret it? The lawyer answers that the Torah says that you should first love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength and all your mind. And second, you should love your neighbor as yourself. This actually is an answer that is historically appropriate. It mirrors Torah commentary from the 1st century. And in the book of Luke, Jesus hears this answer and says, exactly, that is exactly what you were supposed to do. But the lawyer, as lawyers sometimes do, presses on. He asks Jesus, and who is my neighbor? So Jesus starts to tell the story of a man who was walking from Jerusalem to Jericho and who was overtaken by robbers. The man was beaten and robbed and left half dead by the side of the road. A Jewish priest walks by and sees him, but crosses to the other side of the road in order to avoid the injured man. Then a Levite, a functionary at the temple, comes by, and he also crosses to the other side of the road in order to pass by. Now, if you were a Jew in the 1st century listening to this story, you would know what should come next. If a priest does something in a story and then a Levite, then the next person in the story should be an Israelite, one of the faithful. It's kind of like how nowadays, if someone tells you that a rabbi and a priest walk into a bar, you know that a minister is coming in next. But Jesus's parable goes in a different direction. The next person to come by is not an Israelite, but instead it's the Samaritan. Now, there was no love lost between the Israelites and the Samaritans in those days. But in the parable, the Samaritan is moved by pity and helps the traveler, tending to his wounds and taking him to an inn where he gives the innkeeper enough money to house the injured traveler for 2 months. Jesus asks the lawyer, which of these 3 was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the lawyer answers, the one who showed him mercy. The one who showed him mercy. It makes a lot of sense that the story is in the Gospel of Luke, because Luke is full of examples where people at the margins of society are held up, And the parable of the Good Samaritan fits into this larger perspective. In Unitarian Universalist terms, it is a story that emphasizes the interconnected web that binds us all together, as well as the inherent worth and dignity of all people, especially of people we may think of as different from us or as dangerous. Now, the parable of the Good Samaritan is a good story that has been with us for thousands of years. But you might notice that the Samaritan was moved by pity, and he swooped in to take charge of the victim of the bandits. There's an element of saviorhood to this story, which might be natural since Jesus was telling it, but that's something that all of us need to watch out for in ourselves. And that's one reason why it was so important that the plan that we made for Justice GA in Phoenix in 2012 explicitly included being guided by the wisdom and experience of local organizers. Relationship, not saviorhood. Let me tell you a story from my own life where I learned that lesson once again. This happened a few years back. I had just parked my car in a small strip mall in Hillcrest, and I was walking over to a shop when I heard a commotion in the small alleyway leading from the parking lot to the street. There was a woman in a motionless SUV who was honking her horn. I looked to see what the trouble was, and I saw that there was a man who looked like he probably lived on the street, who had fallen down in the alley and was having trouble getting up. He was blocking the alleyway, and the woman in the car couldn't pass by. She looked nervous and anxious to be in the situation. My first instinct was to help the man get up off the ground, but I have to admit, I paused. I took a moment to evaluate the situation. Was there danger? What personal boundaries of my own would I be crossing if I went to help this man? Did crossing these boundaries make me uncomfortable? Why? Should I cross them anyway? And I also thought, do I want to be the priest, the Levite, or the Samaritan? Now, it looked like the man might have been having trouble getting up because he was drunk or otherwise impaired, and I wasn't sure how he might respond to a stranger approaching him while this SUV was looming over him. He was big and fairly stocky and most likely stronger than me. But it was daytime, and there were other people not too far away. So, after a brief moment of hesitation, I decided that the danger was probably small, and I was prepared to cross my internal boundaries. I approached the man and I asked if I could help. After I helped him get up, we walked together to the side of the alley, and I retrieved his bag of possessions, which was still where he had dropped them in the middle of the alley. The woman in the car drove off. The man seemed basically okay, and he did not want any medical care. But I stayed with him for a while to talk. He told me something about his life, and he mentioned that he was divorced. He asked me whether I was married, and I said yes. He told me to look at him. So I met and held his gaze, and he told me, every day, tell her you love her to the nth degree. When I decided to get involved in the situation in the alley, part of me thought that I would be a savior. I would come in and help and leave. But instead, for a few minutes, I had a relationship with this man, and he gave me an unexpected gift. Relationship, not saviorhood. I started today by asking, who is our neighbor? But since today is Mother's Day, I want to close with a related question. Who is our family? Some of us are lucky enough to have good relationships with our mother, our father, our family of origin, our children. But the reality is that families are complicated, and many people face misunderstanding, rejection, rifts, or abuse. So just as we can expand our conception of who our neighbors are, we can expand our conception of who counts as family. The idea of a chosen family has been well understood in the LGBTQ community for years, and that specific term for the concept seems to have started appearing in print in the 1980s or 1990s. It is still depressingly common for LGBTQ teens to be rejected by their families. So there's a need for widening the circle of family to include people who are not biologically related to us, but who provide the love and support that a family should give. So on this Mother's Day, let us honor those who take on the role of motherhood while acknowledging the complexity. May we recognize the connections that bind us to other people, to our families, and to our wider communities. May those connections bring us the love and support that we need and encourage us, in turn, to treat everyone as a neighbor. And if it is safe and healthy and possible for you to do so, call your mom. May it be so.
Thank you, Everett. Thank you for those good words. Appreciate it. I found my reflection turning to the fact that today, by many people who would not be so generous as you were with the homeless man and with others, today they might try to deride the Good Samaritan as a socialist. And of course, socialism didn't exist as an ideology back in the time of Jesus. But what we do know is that in the early Christian community, which was an expression of love in that community, there was this word called koinonia. It's a Greek word which means having or sharing all things in common. And it is in that community of koinonia that we exercise the kind of generosity that you've held up for us today. The generosity of partnership with others, the generosity of helping those who are in need, the generosity of speaking out for those who cannot speak out. And we also want to continue this community and its existence, its health, we want to perpetuate it through our own generosity, our own generous acts. And let's do so by making our offering this morning. You can do it by going online to summituuf.org, and there is on the front page there, you'll see a little button that says plate offering, and you can make your plate offering this morning as a way of sustaining this community of care and this community that's so concerned about righteousness and being right with the world and with one another. Karen, what do you have to play for us as we make our offerings this morning?
Hello, good morning. I'm going to play the Ave Maria that was attached by Gounod to a Bach prelude. It was the first prelude of the Well-Tempered Clavier, and Gounod placed this melody over it. One of the most famous mothers. And I was struck in Italy in my travels to all the references to Mary. There's a whole beautiful church with her whole history. I never learned that in my Lutheran background. So it's interesting how much the female divine sort of aspect of Mary is extolled in Italy, and I really enjoyed that. So this is the Ave Maria by Bach Gounod.
Beautiful, Karen. Thank you so much. Our closing words, indeed, it's a benediction, is from the Reverend Barbara Hamilton Holway. Go now in peace. Deeply regard each other. Truly listen to each other. Speak what each must speak. Be ready in every moment to disarm your own heart. Rejoice in this love you have begun. Amen. Now let's join together, as is our tradition, and together hand in hand. We do it virtually by putting our hands up like this from screen to screen, so we're all connected in that way online. And the words are together hand in hand, in fellowship we stand, through laughter hears, through hopes and fears, together we shall stand. So please sing it as you're able, and Karen will play it through for us. Again, sing in the privacy of your own context there, and we'll join you in just a moment.